Hello there. As you can probably see from the title, I will be talking about the Wayward Realms book, The Pirate King of Sidh, and how good it is. And now, if you want to read this story for yourself, it will be in the description below. But before we get to answering the question, I want to establish how I'll be determining how good this story is. In my view, lore books have three guidelines. One, does it tell us something about the world, meaning it gives us information in the world that we are playing in, or it is a part of it. Two, what we read in the lore book will be representative of what will appear in the game, meaning the contents that are in the book will be present in the game, whether that is a faction, character, place, or an idea. Now, the first 2 points are related to each other, but the difference is point one is more akin to world building in general, while point two is the world building being interactable. So, and then the third point is how good is this story. Now, that is fairly subjective, but I measure how good something is depending on how well it accomplishes what it sets out. So, how does it do on point one? The book does an incredible job showing us off a cultural cross point between the dwarves and orcs. Every 10th year, the dwarves would go to Sidh, the home of the orcs, and return the Marnth. The Marnth being a warrior who gains honor and gold by serving the dwarves. This shows us that the relationship between the two races is at least positive. To participate in this tradition shows that each party has mutual respect for one another, which is very different from other fictions where they're mortal enemies. Orcs would destroy whatever dwarves construct, while the dwarves would hate them for that. It also raises a lot of questions that makes the world feel deeper. How did this arrangement come about? Did the dwarves show the orcs they were honorable and thus became a part of the Marnth tradition? Or are the dwarves allowed to join the tradition of the Marnth because they so happen to be the only ones near the orcs of Sidh to fulfill it? Does this role exist in other orc societies? Where does the Marnth role come from anyway? What exactly is the Marnth role? While the story does show us practically what it does, it still leaves a lot of questions, and it is those questions that give us a huge impact. There are other questions such as do orcs reside in the archipelago, or are there many other orcs all over the place? Again, a lot of these questions are raised when they give us these small answers, and it's really good. So yeah, but we can learn a lot more about the Marnth on how its role is in the story. So the Marnth, for the dwarves at least, seem to be a lot more ceremonial. The Marnth interacts with other dwarves as a silent and intimidating figure. The name Marnth comes from what I have searched, to be serious and intelligent. But also the Marnth seems to be used to form alliances with other pirates, greasing the wheels, one might say. To the orcs, though, it is viewed as a great mythical role that makes your name stone, implying that you will live on long after your death. This simple role in the story gives us so much rich detail and context to the world. The pirates of Crag Reef, a faction in the game, seem to be a loose connection of buccaneers united only in the fact that they are pirates. This new faction gives us, the player, a better idea on what piracy in the Wayward Realms is like, and that it is a very big factor in the world. An alliance of pirates that prey on anyone who comes across, or on port cities like Coventry. But what about the indirect information that we get from this book? Well, we get another mention of the city Coventry. Since its reoccurrence through nearly every story, it seems to be a city of great importance, and its reoccurrence is essentially the developers saying that you must keep your eye on this. The letter of Mark, which means a letter to go out to sea and attack ships belonging to other nations, that seems to imply that the pirates of Crag Reef are either a very organized force or a force with a lot of power. Then there's a character called a hag. Now, why I mention this very minor character is that in fantasy stories there's this trope of a hag who helps or hinders our protagonist. And when you mention a hag in any fantasy setting, they're always usually the same hag, just reoccurring in multiple stories. The obvious one is like Baba Yaga, from I think a Russian or Slavic folklore in general, and this hag seems to not be a one-to-one representation of Baba Yaga, but seems to be an echo of that. It's supposed to remind you of that type of character, and this hag helps our main character Cognac overcome his trial. We also see how powerful she is, as we see her magic work when Cognac sews and cleans the bodies of the dead crew, and it's very specific in the way it says the crew is dead, is that some of their limbs have been like just cut off, and when he just sews and cleans them, it somehow brings the bodies back to life, which again really shows how powerful this hag is. Now, I'm not saying you should expect this to be in the Wayward Realms, but it wouldn't surprise me if there would be a hag-like character in the game. And that is pretty much it. There's not a lot to mention about it, and while it does give a lot more information that is very foundational, like the factions, the cult of the dwarves, and the orcs, it doesn't really do a lot of other stuff, because this story really wants to focus on the story aspect. So yeah. So what about point 2? Just like as I said in Flesh Ripper, I'm unsure if we will interact with anything sea related, as I assume to interact with pirates we will need to have port cities and be on the sea. Now, fighting the city seems to be an expected thing. Again, you could do that in Daggerfall, and since this is a spiritual successor to Daggerfall, you can most likely fight in a city. But I'm unsure if ship combat will be a feature. But let us assume that this sea combat is a feature. The book shows us what factions we will be encountering the most, and that is the Pirates of Crag Reef. And like every other faction, we will most likely be able to increase or decrease our reputation with them. If we have a negative disposition with them, they'll most likely attack us. Then there is the Marinth. Now, I won't say we'll meet a Marinth, but I think it is possible to meet a Marinth, or at least get references to the Marinth within the game. Also, to mention the tone real quickly, it seems that this book is more focused on a ballad style tone rather than a personal or historical one or a darker tone. So this seems to be shifting and telling us, the reader, that the Wayward Realms has this variety of different tones. So yeah, but now let's move on to the story. So to me, I believe the story is trying to invoke the ballads of Scandinavians. And these ballads are normally about a family or an individual life's accomplishment, or it can be about a lesson that is trying to be taught. The Pirate King of Sidh is about Cognac and his journey to learn what being a Marinth means. So this is taking more of a ballad approach to teaching a lesson to other people. Not necessarily saying that the events of the story are fictional, but rather that it is portrayed in a manner that is easy to teach a lesson. The story of the Marinth is a honorable warrior who goes out and serves others. It seems to be more, not necessarily as a rite of passage, but a sort of aspirational point that you can grab. And Cognac is poor in that. He doesn't really understand the role of being a Marinth. The first part is showing Cognac's character, and the second part is addressing Cognac's character flaws. And that is what the book is about. Cognac's journey into understanding and becoming a Marinth. The book accomplishes this very well, at least in my opinion. Cognac at the start isn't actually chosen to be Marinth, but it's because he has no understanding on what it means. This role is given to another then. The reason he doesn't understand the role is because he's only focused on being a Marinth, and what it means to the context of the society. The Marinth is a patient and honorable person. He is not for himself, but for others. He is to serve others and not to be served. But he can't accept that, and that he can't be Marinth, so he kills the actual Marinth, taking his place. Throughout the first book, it shows him beginning to realize that he doesn't deserve to be Marinth, and that he has made a huge mistake. But it is too late for him to do anything, because the ship he is on is destroyed in a storm. the consequences of his actions catching up to him. Book 2 spends a lot of time addressing his flaws and teaching him the real meaning of a Marth. The hag character that I mentioned before is where this comes into play. When he finds his crew alive, he works to help them in any way he can, even if he is exiled by them, by essentially giving them all they need to repair the ship. And at no point does he ask to go back. He doesn't try to be obvious about it either. He tries to make sure it's not him directly helping. It's just like, oh, they so happen to find everything that they need. After he gave them everything that they needed to repair his ship, they didn't necessarily ask him to come back. But a dwarf who told everyone what he did essentially says, we need to bring him back, he deserves to come back on the ship. But they still leave without them. So this dwarf conspires against the crew to essentially make a situation where Cognac will come back and save the ship. And he anchors the ship, Cognac sees and comes to help, and he gets on the ship. He would have left, but the crew, recognizing his redemption and what he did, essentially let him stay on the ship and continue his journey to be a Marth. He also learns the meaning of what a Marth is. And I think this is really cool. It gives us a very good understanding on not only the concept of the world, but also it's just a really nice book as well. And yeah, I mean, I hope you like that. Again, the story is in the description below. So yeah.